All right, everybody. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. And we are jumping right in with the draft evaluations. And even though I certainly wouldn't call it our biggest need right now, we're going to go ahead and start with quarterback. Quarterback's a position that I think people are always kind of interested in. And also, with some of the information we've learned recently about the quarterbacks the Seahawks have, it might be a little more interesting than we might have expected to talk about this group. There's at least going to be some pull, some desire on the part of some of the fans to start thinking about the future beyond what is currently on the roster. So let's take a look at quarterbacks. We've got two guys that are currently projected to be first round picks, and they're going to encompass our initial discussion here. So we'll lead off with the current number one player on the mock draft database, big board, Cam Ward. Cameron Ward of the Miami Hurricanes used to be a Cougar. Before that, he was at, I believe, Incarnate Word. So a few different colleges, but he's made some very nice improvements as a player over the last few years. Went from a very, very small school that no one had ever really heard of before to almost getting the Miami Hurricanes to the playoff and putting up Heisman caliber numbers. So 23 years old. And by the way, again, I want to stress the age I put is the age they're going to be when the season starts. So in some cases, the player isn't the age that I list yet, but he will be before the 2024 or 2025 season kicks off. He didn't really do anything at the combine in terms of the drills. He did, however, measure in, and as you can see, he's a good deal smaller than the average quarterback throughout the years. He's 6'2", 219 pounds, so that's close to the median weight for a quarterback, but very short arms and very small hands, so he looks kind of big if you watch him play in college, it feels like, but he's not going to look so big in the NFL. Just be prepared for that. Every big board has him in the first round. Walter Football has him barely in the first round, and PFF has him just outside the top 20. Everyone else has him in the top 10, and the database currently has him number one. Now, I think that's very obviously because he's a quarterback, and there's kind of an obligation to put a quarterback at number one on these things. Nevertheless, though, he is currently number one, and you can see the numbers he's put up the last two seasons. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on what he did last year. 4,300 yards, completed over two-thirds of his passes, 39 touchdowns, ran for 4 touchdowns, 200 yards, 7 interceptions. And the numbers are not as good the previous year, but they're still good. So this guy's put up some massive production as a quarterback over the last two seasons. Now, speaking about him as a prospect, here are my pros. I have quite a few of them. He's got a quick release. He does get the ball out quickly once he decides to throw it. He can throw under duress and off platform. So disrupting him does not necessarily mean ending the play like it would for some quarterbacks. He's one of those quarterbacks that can drop his arm angle and sidearm it or fit it into like a 3/4 window throw. Or excuse me, not window, but like a 3/4 arm angle throw. So he's got some of that Mahomes arm talent type stuff. He does have a big arm. He can make mostly all the throws. He doesn't have an absolute cannon arm or anything like that. He's not Josh Allen or anything like that, but he does have a big arm. He's not afraid of taking risks and going for the big play. In fact, that's something that we'll get into when we talk about some of the cons with him. He does have some ability to feather in throws and like layer throws in. His mobility is not stellar, but he can buy time with it and he can scramble for yards. He is capable of taking off for decent gains. It's not a big part of his game. I wouldn't necessarily call Cameron Ward a dual threat, but he's not a pure pocket quarterback either. He's hard to bring down. He is somebody who can break tackles. He's somebody who can fight through contact. He's pretty smart pre-snap as well. He's pretty good at diagnosing stuff pre-snap. And he goes through his progressions well. This is not just a physical specimen. This is somebody who can actually dissect a defense in terms of going through his options. Now, that all sounds great, but I will say that he's still at the point in his career where more complex defensive coverages will trick him. If you show him one thing pre-snap and then give him something else post-snap, I think he does struggle to pick that up a little bit. Now, that's not uncommon compared to other college quarterbacks, but if you're taking a guy number one overall, I think it's fair to nitpick. And Cam Ward, if he's not number one overall, will be pretty darn close to it. Mechanically, he's a little inconsistent, which affects his accuracy. He's not the most accurate quarterback out there. I think that sometimes he can lose his mechanics a little bit, and that causes inaccurate throws. He is a hero ball guy, and his risk management has to improve. There have been some absolutely unacceptable throws, even as recently as last year on his resume. You can easily find them if you go out there. Throwing across his body while on the run, across the middle of the field, like the old Brett Favre stuff. You see that stuff with him, and it just has to stop. There's some risk management is okay, but there needs to come a point where you realize you just have to take the L on this play or take the easy short stuff. I think that sometimes he's a little too bold in pushing the ball down the field, and he doesn't have to be. He doesn't always utilize his ability to feather in throws, the ability to put touch on the ball. He has it. He can do it. Sometimes, though, he whips in a fastball when he doesn't need to. And this doesn't really have anything to do with Cam Ward as a prospect, but I do think he's going to get overdrafted. I don't think Cam Ward is on the level of a prospect that should be going number one overall or even really in the top 5 or top 10, but he almost certainly will, because that's just the way this works. Like, you can't tell me that Cameron Ward is anywhere close to a Caleb Williams or even a Jaden Daniels or even a Drake May from last year. But because this is the draft class that we're dealing with, where it's not very good, we're probably going to be living in that reality here. So that has nothing to do with him, but it is an issue with acquiring him. So overall, I think there's a lot of potential here. I'm a little higher on him than I thought I would be before looking at him. And for the most part, all he really has to do is get a little bit smarter. He just has to eliminate the immaturity in his game, the overly risky throws, the times where he just tries to be Superman when he doesn't need to be. And it's mostly just mental stuff that can get better. But I do think he's going to be overvalued in this draft. And like I said, he could go number one overall. He could go in the top 3. I don't look at him that way. If Cam Ward fell to the Seahawks pick at 18, I would consider that to be about reasonable value. I would be okay with that. I think that would be fair. But somebody's going to take him well before that. And that I'm not super into. I don't want to force myself to take a quarterback just because he's a quarterback. So if by some miracle Cam Ward falls to 18, I'm certainly interested, but I don't expect that to happen. And he's certainly not a guy I think is worth trading up for. All right, so the other first-round quarterback right now, and probably the only other one we're going to deal with, is Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, the Buffaloes. We've heard plenty about this guy. I don't think I need to go into super tight detail on him as a prospect, because we've heard everything about this guy. This guy lives in the spotlight. 23 years old. His measurements are, again, kind of on the smaller side. He's a smaller quarterback, especially in terms of his actual weight. Decent arm length, decent hand size for whatever that's worth, but he is a little bit on the smaller side, which is a concern with how much abuse he's taken. The big boards are a little all over the place. A few have him in the top 10, but two have him outside the first round altogether. The database, however, does put him at 4th overall, so there is clearly a pull here. And hey, the stats are very pretty these last 2 years. They're a little bit up and down. Like last year, his interceptions went way up, but so did his accuracy. So which one would you prefer? Do you like the extra touchdowns, or do you want basically no interceptions and you're trading off 10 touchdowns? Do you want the elite accuracy, or would you rather have... It's the trade-off. So 2 really, really good seasons at Colorado. In 2023, it was kind of in service of nothing because the team was still bad, but 2024, Buffaloes were pretty good. So what I can say about him positively, he is very accurate when given a clean throw opportunity, when the pocket's clean and he's able to set his feet and throw it. He will hit his target most of the time. He's a lot more accurate than Cam Ward, I think. He possesses rare toughness and confidence. He's willing to take a big hit. He's willing to hang in the pocket and take abuse to get the throw off right. He's willing to take hit after hit after hit and keep getting up and keep going. He has the confidence to stand in against those extreme circumstances and still find a way to get it done. He understands throwing the ball with anticipation. He understands that sometimes you throw it when the player isn't open because the player will be open if you throw it to the right area. He is well versed in dealing with pressure, and that does have some downsides. But when he gets pressured, he doesn't panic. He still tries to make the same play that he was trying to make originally, which comes with some downside, but it definitely has the upside of him not dropping his eye level and starting to run around like a chicken with his head cut off. He does a pretty good job of buying time in the pocket with his mobility. He's certainly not a dual threat quarterback, not even close, but he can use the little bit of mobility he has to fumble around in the pocket and get away from pressure from time to time. I think he's pretty savvy with the pregame and postgame. I'm sorry, pre-snap and post-snap part of the game. So the cerebral elements of his game seem pretty strong to me. And he is capable of putting touch on the ball when he needs to. He can layer it in to a receiver through coverage. It's a legitimate NFL arm. But, and this is what my main con here, my main issue here, his arm is not that good. His arm is okay. It's mediocre. He doesn't have the ability to really rifle it in there the way you would like. He doesn't have the ability to really get the ball downfield the way you like. It's an okay NFL arm. It's very, very mediocre. I think that's the right word to put it. Not bad, but if I'm taking a guy in the top 5 of the draft, I want way better than this. And, of course, anybody who watches Colorado knows he takes a ton of sacks. And some of that is because Colorado had a very bad offensive line, but some of it is because he hangs in the pocket too long and he doesn't have the mobility to take off and make something out of nothing the way other quarterbacks do. There are quarterbacks out there that, when faced with a breaking down pocket, can take off and scramble for yards. Shedeur doesn't really do that. So he takes way too many sacks, and some of it is on him. He needs to adjust the way that he plays to have more success in the NFL. He does have a slow release, which only leads to more throws getting disrupted because he's getting pressured and hit, whereas other quarterbacks with a quicker release would have had the ball out before they get pressured and hit. Like I said, he's not a dual threat at all. He's a pocket quarterback with some mobility, but he's not going to take off and run for big gains. He's just not. He does have a little bit of hero ball in him. He does have the desire to go get the big play, and sometimes you just need to check it down and take the little play. He doesn't love to do that. That's something that's probably going to have to come with time. And I think the big concern with Shedeur right now, beyond what he does on the field, there are some character concerns with Shedeur after some of the things that he said this last year at Colorado about his offensive line. You don't like hearing that from your quarterback. That is something that has to be a little bit of a red flag. That is something that makes you wonder if this guy has the leadership and the media savvy, I guess would be the right word, to really make it in this league. There is a need to be able to do what Russell Wilson has done most of his career. You don't let that stuff out. You keep it inside. You don't show it to the media. You don't show it to the public. And when the time comes, you handle it privately. Shedeur didn't do that this last year, and that has to concern you. So he's a gamer. I give Shedeur a lot of credit for that. He's a guy who absolutely fights hard. He's a guy who really wants this. He does have some things about him that I really like. There are some areas where he shows the ability of a savvy veteran, but the arm is not good enough to really tempt me. And then you have the character concerns, and there's just too much going on here for me to really be in on it. So if we get to round 2 and he's still there, like if he's there even early second round, then I'm thinking, okay, the juice is worth the squeeze. And a couple big boards have him falling that far, but I seriously doubt it happens. And if it doesn't happen, then I'm pretty out on Shedeur. So that's my evaluation of the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft. Let me know what you guys think. I like both to an extent, but I think both are pretty overrated right now as prospects. So we'll come back later with more quarterbacks soon. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Let's go.